Today, we're going to talk about a little bit of a different topic. This one's maybe even a bit somber. It's about the topic of betrayal, which I think at some point everyone will probably face. And I don't think I need to get into all of the nuanced details, but there is a topic here that I think is worth getting into, or at least discussing, though I'm not really sure if I have the answer or a conclusion to it. In order to get there, I'm going to tell you a story because I think a lot of it centers around this. We've all heard of 007, that movie series. And I remember watching one, I think I was in college, and I remember, they're on a boat. 007 breaks in, they're about to save I think it was that. Maybe it was Taken. And it was one of those movies. And I remember the protagonist gets captured, as well as the person he was trying to save. And the villain, who's getting ready to kill the two of them, explains his reasoning for doing what he's doing, which is killing them. And his explanation is, it's nothing personal. It's just business. And I remember hearing that explanation and thinking how cold that was. And be like, wow, it's crazy to think that people could be like that. They probably can, or whatever. And I don't know, it was college, high school, something like that. It was a while ago. And yet, what's interesting about that is if I really look, especially at the business losses that I've had, losses that came from partners, or former partners, that is, what I've come to conclude is that maybe a lot more people are capable of that than I previously expected. And so much so that it's worth talking about here now. So that's the topic. That's what I want to discuss here, is that characteristic, this villain in a movie, right, that's trying to kill the protagonist is something that we can face on the daily around us. And it kind of got me thinking about the moral issue, the dilemma that a lot of us will face, which is it centers around how we deal with our goals and the people that we're working with as we're trying to get there. It's funny because in order to answer that, we'd probably have to explain a bit more about the definition around a partner, right? In business, at least, I think a partner is someone that you're kind of collaborating with, or at least teaming up with, so that you're sharing the wins and sharing the losses. That's it. If you grow together. If you lose together. And if you both lose enough times, you talk about going different directions. If you both keep winning, then you talk about how you're going to split if the responsibilities change. But that's pretty much a partnership. You're tied in each other's success. And I think what I've come to find is that if we assume that that's the definition of it, more people than way more than I ever thought are willing to, when time permits, when they get the chance, they're willing to, at the expense of the partner, move ahead further. It's happened to me a lot of times, and it's happened to me again more recently. And I imagine what the big reason why I'm talking about it now, in non-specifics, but why I'm talking about it is because I think there's some kind of moral responsibility we have there. So there's one other question I need to ask and answer in order to get to that point. And that point is basically, does business really need any kind of moral integration? And does it even make any fucking sense? Because the point is to make money and go somewhere. But if you're trying to achieve something, but also there's something moralistically preventing you from doing that, does it serve a purpose or place there? And I've thought about it a lot. Maybe the goal could just be trying to go for and make money. Yes? It's okay. You can tell me. Yeah. All right. Okay. I think the purpose, your goal is out there is to make money, definitely, right? But is it at any cost? And I think that the difference between someone who's willing to take from a partner in order to grow and the villain in that movie that I was talking about, which is a common villain, by the way. They show up in cartoons and stuff like that, and that's the rationale. The difference is only the stakes, which means if you leave someone like that to feel like they can keep doing that and everything's fine, they can get away with it, then that means you've now created this Bond villain on a larger scale, not because of action, but because of inaction. And so if we assume that there is to be a moral compass around making money and achieving things in life, it's not necessarily at any cost, but at most costs, minus a list of set morals and responsibilities that you have to the people closest to you. Why would you do that? I guess is the question. And I think the reason is because making money, doing the business thing, is a good thing, right? You're ideally giving value to the people that are hiring you, that you're serving. That's the goal. That's why you earn those funds. Yet at the same time, there should be, ideally, a North Star for all of us. Some big thing, and maybe it moves, maybe it's one thing and it changes over to another thing. But if you have that big grandiose thing that you're trying to achieve that all of these little pieces will ultimately add up to, well then what that could mean is that actually the reason why you're fighting might be the how you get there might be the reason why you're fighting, right? Meaning that if you had to murder an entire group of people, right? We're talking villains here, in order to achieve this goal that you're trying to get, was it worth it? Probably not, right? On the grand scheme of things. Yet, what's the difference there? Like, how much do you take from somebody in order to achieve that thing? I think, so, my conclusion from evaluating all of this was that basically, if you sacrifice the list of responsibilities and morals in order to get the thing, then you lost yourself in the process. Even if that got you more resources, I would feel like I lost a piece of me if I said okay to doing that. And so if we assume all of those things to be true, then there's another piece here that's kind of left out, and that is our responsibility, I guess, as a community with each other. And that responsibility, I think, is to do the opposite of what you're usually told. When I go on GPT or talk to, like, I don't know, a friend or a colleague in the space, usually the advice I get, or even I spoke to an offender recently, I don't know if that's the best word for it, but someone who I was a partner with and then fucking at my expense made a ton more money, then, and like I said, there's many of them, there's probably in many people's lives, but the conclusion was more like, okay, well, you better tighten your system, write more legal documents, prepare more this, prepare more that. And to some extent, they're right? I think there is a degree of protection you have to make for yourself. Now, at the same time, you can do a lot of those things and still something like this can happen. So if this is possible, what are your options? Where do you go from there? As best I can tell, again, from GPT, talking to friends that have been in the same space, most people will tell you that the best PR strategy, the best way to learn from it is to just learn from it. Like to deal with it is to learn from it. You take it, you swallow it, you take the punch, and then you just keep going, you pivot, and you learn. And that's it. So it's like a quiet endeavor. And while it sounded noble at first, I've been thinking about it a lot more, that it may actually make more sense, and who knows, I could be wrong, it's just me mulling over it in my head, that if that is left unchecked, you're creating more of those villains in the world, right? Not because these are bad people, but because, for example, when I spoke to one of these people recently, and when I said, we're gonna have to separate, stop interacting with each other, like for my own boundary, they were hurt. They were sad. They understood, but they didn't understand the moral piece. They're like, what moral piece exactly? And so I explained how in a situation you can take yourself a little bit further, but at the expense of someone that you were working with, right? And that isn't necessarily something I subscribe to. The conclusion was, oh, interesting, you're right, I see what you're talking about, too late to go back now. And maybe it was. But at the same time, my lesson from that is something that I see multiple times, which is if you do not identify the thing to the person, it may be no fault of their own that they just don't understand the ramifications of what they're doing. And that by being really, really quiet and passive about it, you may be empowering the thing to continue to happen. And it's my belief that all of us have kind of a responsibility to not just focus on our little pile that we're building up, but a little bit of the other stuff, which is a light, fluffy thing to sort of generally say, oh yeah, I'm trying to save the world and make money, and then burning down the rainforest in order to make money so that you can save the world. It doesn't make any fucking sense to me. So another way the way that I think we're trying to do this, I think, if we want to change the landscape of business as it seems like it's currently run, then probably what it looks like is having some real conversations around the ethics and moral standards that we want around us, not just that we can use to take from others, but to give to others, or to not take, or to not give. Just where those things begin and end. And again, if you assume that there's no malicious intent in these things, which I think we should, then it means that the dialogue around this could help better educate others and ourselves how to go through partnerships so that we're not burning down the rainforest to build our little empire, if that metaphor tracks. If my goal was to, let's say, for sake of argument, make money, save the world. I hear this one and I like it a lot. But if it's just a stack on your pile at any cost, and then so that you can decide what things are fed into, okay, that could be fine, I guess. But, we see a lot of people that works with. Some do it responsibly and some may not. But they all get there. And I would argue, it seems like it could be easier if you do it maybe not the most moral way, or at least the way that I'm talking about. But if we all were to collectively, the majority of us, decide there should be a list of, or a code of ethics that we abide by, then that would mean that breaking those things is a moment for us all to learn, hey, we don't do that. Here's a better solution, right? And there's no book for that. There's a book for how to make money, and there's clear opportunities to leverage and pull people around, but there's no space I can go to be like, what's responsible here? What feels good? And not all of us have an equal amount of emotional intelligence, EI, right? To be like, oh, okay, maybe this might be ruining this person's house by being able to run through it with mud on my feet, right? Anyways, it's something to consider. If you have had something like that happen, you don't have to be specific about it, but I'd be curious. And I think the conclusion that I've come to on all of this, at least for now, is this is part of the journey. We're supposed to learn how to do it, how to navigate these things, not so that we can burn each other down, but so that we can ultimately, I think, all learn from each other in this process so that we can be the best version of ourselves, which doesn't mean we consume the most or achieve the least in money value, but we distribute the greatest amount of value in every direction so that we in return get that. Because if we're capable of filling other people's cups as well as ours, especially once ours is a certain degree full, I think that's what betters the world a lot more than all of us just fighting for our own bread at any cost. I think that could mean that some of the best causes get buried along the way. So, not sure if that helps make you feel any better, other than the fact that if it has, you're not alone. If it hasn't happened to you, it probably will. So be careful out there and try and give everyone the benefit of the doubt, because they deserve it, as do you. And we're all trying to figure this big video game out. Anyways, okay, so have fun, make friends. See you later.